My husband abandoned me during my cancer treatment. 4 years later, he wanted me back, not knowing I was cancer-free and living with the ex he was always jealous of. 5 years ago, I married Jerry. We were both 25 at the time, fresh out of college and still riding the wave of that youthful optimism that makes you think nothing can ever go wrong. We had dated for 3 years and marriage felt like the natural progression. Everyone was rooting for us. We seemed like the perfect couple. I honestly thought we were happy, and for a while, we were. Then, 4 months after the wedding, my world flipped upside down. I was diagnosed with stage 2 cervical cancer. There had been subtle warning signs for months: constant fatigue, random aches, and other symptoms I brushed off as nothing serious. But when things started getting worse, we finally took it seriously. The diagnosis hit us like a ton of bricks. At first, Jerry was my rock. He was everything I needed him to be and more. He took charge of everything, handling my medical reports, coordinating with doctors, and making sure I never felt alone. When I started chemotherapy and lost my hair, he shaved his head to make me feel less self-conscious. I remember thinking, this is love. This is what it means to have a partner who truly has your back. But as the months dragged on, my condition didn't improve. In fact, it got worse. After 6 months of grueling treatments with no sign of progress, Jerry started to pull away. It was subtle at first. He'd zone out during conversations or spend longer hours at work. I could feel the shift, and it terrified me. I was already fighting for my life. I didn't have the energy to fight for our marriage, too. When I tried to talk to him, he'd shut me out. I felt like I was losing him, and it broke something inside me. In my desperation, I started picking fights, anything to get a reaction, to remind him that I was still here and that we were supposed to be in this together. But instead of bringing us closer, it pushed him further away. 2 weeks before our 1-year anniversary, I woke up to find his side of the bed empty. There was a note on the nightstand. It said he couldn't do this anymore and begged me not to try and find him. I thought it was a cruel joke at first, but when I tried to call him, I realized he had blocked me on everything. His phone, his social media, all of it. He was just gone. I called his parents hoping they'd have answers, but they claimed to know nothing. My parents had to move in with me because I couldn't take care of myself. We all assumed Jerry would come back after a few days once he'd had time to clear his head, but he didn't. Days turned into weeks, then months. A month later, his parents showed up unannounced. I thought they were there to check on me, but no. They were there to serve me divorce papers. I remember staring at the papers, feeling like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. They were cold and distant, like I was a stranger to them. I begged them to tell me where Jerry was, but they wouldn't. All they said was that he wanted nothing to do with me anymore. "He's sorry," they said, as if that was supposed to make it better. "He can't waste his life like this." Waste his life? Those words haunted me. I was devastated. Not just because he left, but because it became clear that my illness was the reason. He couldn't handle it, he couldn't handle me, and instead of being honest about it, he ran away like a coward. I spiraled into depression after that. The treatments were brutal, and there were days when I wanted to give up, but my parents were my saving grace. They stuck by me through everything, even when I was at my lowest. Fast forward 4 years, by some miracle, I beat cancer. I fought like hell, and I won. In the process, I reconnected with my ex-boyfriend, the one Jerry had always been insecure about. What started as casual conversations turned into something more, and before I knew it, we were living together. Then, out of nowhere, Jerry reached out to me. 4 years of silence, and he suddenly wanted me back. He had no idea I was cancer-free or that I was with someone else. I think he assumed I was still broken and desperate for him. But I wasn't. I had healed, physically, emotionally, and mentally. I never responded to his message. There was nothing left to say. We never had an honest, open conversation about what we were feeling. I tried to initiate one, but he clearly did not think he owed me even that. So, instead of addressing what went wrong or giving me some closure, he just left without saying a word. At first, I was overwhelmed by the emotional weight of it all. Coming to terms with the fact that someone you shared your life with could just disappear like that, without even a goodbye, was brutal. But when his parents sent over the divorce papers, it was like a bucket of cold water waking me up. I realized there was no point in holding on to something that was so obviously gone. So, I signed them without putting up a fight. I made sure to have a lawyer comb through every line, just to be thorough, but there was nothing shady in the terms. Honestly, they were fair, and there wasn't much to divide anyway. We had been married for barely a year, and neither of us had accumulated significant joint assets. Dragging things out would have been pointless for both of us. After the mandatory waiting period, we finalized the divorce. We never even saw each other face to face throughout the entire process. Everything that needed to be said or done was handled through lawyers and his parents. For an uncontested divorce, it was all incredibly clean and clinical. Once it was finalized, his family stopped reaching out, and that was the end of it. But while everything seemed tidy on paper, emotionally, I was wrecked, completely shattered. The heartbreak I went through started to affect my health. My parents were doing their best to be strong for me, but I could see how much it hurt them to watch me fall apart. It would have been so easy to just give up. Honestly, some days I wanted to, but I kept thinking about them and how much it would destroy them if I gave in. So I chose to fight, not just emotionally, but physically too. I don't know if it was my mindset or the treatment kicking in, but somehow I pulled through. And now, here I am, alive and cancer-free for 3 months. It has been anything but easy, but I'm still here, and for that, I am endlessly grateful. Part of that gratitude is what pushed me to open myself up to the possibility of love again. I decided to give myself a second chance, and that is why 6 months ago, I agreed to let my ex-boyfriend move in with me. For context, this is not the ex you might be thinking about. This ex, let's call him Andy, and I dated back in college for 2 years. We had a good thing, but after graduation, we went our separate ways because our life goals just didn't align. Andy and I were part of a larger friend group, and that is actually how I first met Jerry. Yes, the guy I ended up marrying and divorcing, Jerry was part of that same circle. After Andy and I broke up, Jerry reached out to me and we started talking. It was innocent at first, just friends. But a few months in, he confessed that he had liked me even back in college. He said he never acted on it because I was with Andy, but now that I was single, he wanted a chance. I was hesitant, but Jerry was persistent. Eventually, I agreed to give it a shot. Things moved quickly between us after that. We got serious, and since Jerry always seemed insecure about Andy, I made the decision to distance myself from Andy completely. It was not easy, but I felt like it was the right thing to do at the time. Jerry was important to me, and I wanted to prioritize our relationship. Looking back, I can see how Andy must have felt betrayed when I slowly ghosted him. Our mutual friends told me he had been disappointed, and I honestly felt bad about it. But at the time, my relationship with Jerry mattered more. We got married and I moved on, putting Andy out of my mind entirely. Then the divorce happened. Even though I never made a public announcement about my divorce or my cancer diagnosis, a few close friends knew, and I am guessing that is how Andy found out. About 5 months after my divorce was finalized, he reached out to me via email. His message was kind and empathetic. He said he had heard about everything I was going through and that he was sorry. For the divorce, the cancer, all of it. That email was the first step in reconnecting, and 6 months ago, he moved in with me. When he reached out, he said he genuinely wanted to be friends again, but he also made it clear that he would completely understand if I did not feel comfortable with it. He did not push or demand anything from me. He just left the door open in the most respectful and thoughtful way. His email was so sweet, gentle, and understanding, without any trace of pressure. He ended by telling me that if I ever needed someone to talk to, he would always be there for me, no matter what. At the time, though, I was still in complete shock from Jerry leaving me. I felt like my whole world had crumbled, and responding to Andy's message was just not something I had the emotional bandwidth for. For 10 months, I left that email unanswered. It was not like I forgot about it, far from it. I thought about it more often than I would admit, even to myself. I kept telling myself I would respond, but every time I sat down to do it, something inside me froze. It was like a knot I could not untangle. Finally, after months of wrestling with my emotions and slowly coming to terms with the fact that Jerry was never coming back, I decided to respond. Some of my friends had been nudging me to do it too. They said there was no harm in talking to him in a friendly way, and maybe they were right. I was not planning to rekindle anything romantic, I just wanted to clear the air. He had made an effort to reach out, and I felt like I owed it to both of us to meet him halfway. When I finally replied, I kept things strictly platonic. No mixed signals, no ambiguities, just friendly conversation. That was the beginning of us talking again, and to my surprise, it felt easy. We slipped back into a rhythm that I had not realized I missed so much. Andy had always understood me in a way that nobody else did. I have other friends, and they are wonderful, but with Andy there has always been this unspoken connection, something special. Talking to him again made me happy in a way I had not felt in a long time. Even my parents noticed the change in me. They encouraged me to keep talking to him, saying that even if it was just friendship, it was good for me to have someone like him in my life. For the first few months, our conversations were purely online. Then, little by little, he started visiting me at home. I was cautious. I was not ready for anything beyond friendship. But having him around again felt good. It was comforting. Slowly, we grew closer. One day, he told me something I was not expecting to hear. He said he had never really stopped loving me. Finding out that I was with Jerry had been devastating for him, but he stayed away because above all else, he wanted me to be happy. Now that Jerry was gone and we were reconnecting, he felt like he needed to be honest with me. He assured me he was not expecting anything from me. He just had to get it off his chest. I appreciated his honesty, but it left me in a whirlwind of emotions. It had been 3 years since my divorce, and while I had made peace with Jerry leaving, there were still so many unresolved feelings. Closure was something I had never gotten, and thinking about Jerry still brought a twinge of pain. At the same time, I knew in my heart that I had developed feelings for Andy again. Maybe I had never really stopped loving him either. When I confided in my parents and friends, they helped me see things clearly. They reminded me that I had spent years stuck in the past, waiting for someone who had clearly moved on without a second thought. They encouraged me to give myself a second chance at happiness, especially now that I was healthier and more stable. Having faced so much uncertainty in life, I realized they were right. Life is too short to dwell on what might have been. Andy had shown me nothing but love, patience, and understanding, and he deserved a chance. So, a couple of weeks later, I decided to take a leap of faith. I told Andy that I was ready to give us another shot. Being with him again felt like coming home. After a few months of being back together, he told me he wanted to take care of me in every sense of the word. He suggested moving in, and after discussing it with my parents, we agreed it was a good idea. He was already spending most of his time at my place, so it felt like a natural progression. Since then, we have been living together, and honestly, it has been wonderful. Having him around brings a sense of comfort and joy that I had been missing for so long. A few weeks after Andy moved in, my parents decided to move out and give us our space. They still visit often, but now they have time to enjoy their own lives too, which they seem to really appreciate. I am not ready for marriage again just yet. It is a big step, and after everything I've been through, I want to take my time. Andy understands that, and we have had honest conversations about the future. Maybe someday we will walk down that road together. For now, I am just grateful for what we have. A second chance, a fresh start, and a love that feels stronger than ever. For the past few months, I have genuinely been happy. Like actually happy for the first time in what feels like forever. Being cancer-free is a miracle in itself, but on top of that, I am living with Andy, who is not just my boyfriend, but also my rock. He genuinely loves me, and I love him too. Life felt like it was finally coming together after all the chaos. Honestly, I thought I had put all the worst parts of my life behind me. Everything was peaceful, even boring in the best way possible. But then, earlier this week, Jerry, my ex-husband, decided to waltz back into my life. Out of nowhere, I get a Facebook message from him. Apparently, he had unblocked me on everything. Yes, he had blocked me everywhere for 4 whole years. And now he wanted to talk. The message started with a typical apology. It was all about how he had treated me poorly and how I did not deserve it. He even brought up my cancer diagnosis and admitted he had been frustrated back then, but instead of sticking it out, he chose to do the most cowardly thing possible. He left. No discussion, no warning, just gone. He wanted me to know that he regretted it, that he felt I deserved closure. Okay, fine, but then he drops this bombshell. Jerry said he wanted to get back together. Like what? He said he had spent the past 4 years missing me and realizing what a huge mistake he had made. He was ready to give our marriage another shot and claimed he would be willing to take care of me no matter what, even if I was still sick. He said he wanted us to pick up where we left off, like none of it had happened. It was honestly so insulting to read, the audacity of this man. But I will admit, I was curious. So I decided to invite him over. Not because I was entertaining the idea of getting back together, but because I wanted to confront him, to show him exactly how much he had lost. I guess you could say I wanted to hurt him, though I did not set out to be cruel. It was more about showing him that I had moved on, that I had a life now and he was not part of it. Maybe that was petty, but I felt like I deserved at least that much. The thing is, Jerry had no idea I was cancer-free now. He had assumed I was still struggling, and I had never corrected that assumption because I did not feel like he deserved to know. I also never posted about my recovery online, so only my close friends and family knew I was fine now. He must have thought he was swooping in to save me, but all he did was remind me how much he had hurt me when I needed him the most. So, fast forward to a couple of days ago. Jerry showed up at my house holding a big bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates, looking like he had just stepped out of a romantic comedy. I opened the door and let him stand there for a second, probably thinking he was about to have some grand reunion moment. Then I called Andy over. Andy walked up to the door, stood beside me, and I told Jerry very calmly that while I appreciated his apology, I had moved on. I told him I was happy with my life now and that there was no room for him in it. That is when Jerry completely lost it. I could see the realization dawning on his face. Andy was here, in my house, and we were together. It was like watching a train crash in slow motion. He started yelling, accusing me of betraying him, of cheating on him, even though we had been separated for 4 years. It was honestly ridiculous. I just stood there completely unfazed because I had nothing to feel guilty about. He was the one who left, not me. He was the one who decided I was not worth sticking around for. So after watching him flail for a bit, I told him to leave. When he refused to budge, I just shut the door in his face and walked back to the couch. Andy was cool about the whole thing. I had not even told him Jerry was coming over, but he trusted me enough not to make a big deal out of it. My parents and friends, on the other hand, were not thrilled. They thought I was being toxic and that inviting Jerry over was unnecessary drama. And honestly, they might be right. Since that day, Jerry's parents, my former in-laws, have not stopped calling me. They think I am being heartless, that I should have at least considered giving Jerry another chance. But why should I? He made his choice 4 years ago, and so did I. My life is better now without him in it, and I am not going to apologize for that. They said that if I had truly moved on, then I should not have agreed to invite their son over to my house in the first place. They accused me of giving him false hopes because, according to them, he had been feeling genuinely sorry for everything that he had done. Apparently, he was trying to fix things with me, and the fact that he reached out and made the effort to come visit was proof of that. To them, I was the one in the wrong for not being more receptive, even though I had made it abundantly clear that I had no intention of reconciling with him. On top of that, they are accusing me of trying to ruin his mental health on purpose, as if that was some grand scheme I had concocted out of spite. And if that were not enough, they even had the audacity to imply that I might have been having an affair with Andy all along. Like, seriously, they know for a fact that for the past 4 years, I have been focused entirely on healing and rebuilding my life after what their son put me through. And before Jerry and I got married, I had completely blocked Andy out of my life because I wanted to show Jerry that I was committed to our relationship. So how they even managed to twist this into an accusation of infidelity is beyond me. It is infuriating, really. The worst part is how they are bending over backward to paint me as the villain in this entire situation. In their eyes, their son is somehow this innocent victim, and I am the one who is out here wreaking havoc for no reason. Let's not forget that this is the same man who abandoned me when I was literally fighting for my life. He ghosted me for 4 years after walking out on our marriage and did not even bother showing up for our divorce proceedings. And yet, I am the one being expected to play nice and just let bygones be bygones? Honestly, my parents and friends are not exactly helping either. They are not outright attacking me, but they have made it clear that they do not support what I did. According to them, inviting Jerry over just to show him my new life was unnecessary and kind of petty. They said they understood where I was coming from and why I might have felt the need to make a point, but they also think it could have been handled differently. It is not like they are blowing it out of proportion, but their comments still stung. And now I am feeling a little guilty about the whole thing. Looking back, I guess I could have avoided all this unnecessary drama if I had just ignored Jerry's message altogether. I knew what I was doing when I agreed to meet him, and yeah, it was petty. I can admit that. But do I regret it enough to apologize to him? No, absolutely not. I do not think what I did was as big of a deal as his parents are making it out to be. The way they are acting, you would think I had committed some unforgivable crime. Let's not lose sight of the fact that neither Jerry nor his parents ever apologized for what he did to me. They were nowhere to be found when I was at my lowest, so why am I now expected to be the bigger person and act like nothing happened? Anyway, I know it was a bold move to invite my ex-husband into my home, knowing full well that it was not for the reasons he thought. I wanted to show him that I had moved on, that I had built a life for myself without him, and that I was doing just fine. Does that make me the jerk in this situation? Maybe. But considering everything he put me through, I think I have earned the right to be a little petty now and then. Update 1. Hi everyone. First of all, I just want to thank all of you for the comments on my previous post. Seriously, the advice and perspectives were super helpful, even the ones calling me out. I have been doing a lot of thinking since then, and I wanted to share an update because honestly, this whole situation has been such a mess. So let me address the most obvious thing. Yes, I spoke to my parents and my close friends about everything, why I did, what I was thinking, and how I felt afterward. I know some of you are probably rolling your eyes at me right now, and honestly, I don't blame you. I won't deny that what I did was petty. It absolutely was. And I'll also admit that it was unnecessary. The drama could have been avoided entirely if I had just taken a deep breath and not responded to him at all. I get that now. But in that moment, I felt like I needed closure. I was angry, hurt, and just tired of carrying it all around. So, yeah, I reacted impulsively. Do I think it was the smartest way to handle the situation? Definitely not. But do I regret it? Honestly, no. Maybe that makes me a terrible person, but I feel like I needed to let out some of those pent-up emotions, even if it wasn't the most graceful way to do it. My parents and friends were pretty neutral about it, to be honest. They didn't agree with what I did, but they didn't push me to apologize either. It was more like, yeah, maybe you could have handled it differently, but it's done now. We had a brief conversation about it, decided to move on, and agreed not to dwell on it. It's just not a big deal to them. Our relationships are fine, and nothing has changed on that front. The real issue here, the one that's been driving me absolutely crazy, is my in-laws. For some reason, they have taken it upon themselves to make this their problem. They are furious with me. Apparently, what I did has emotionally destroyed their son. They genuinely think I have tortured him by inviting him over, and now they're demanding that I apologize. Not just an email or a text, they want me to meet him in person, sit down, and give him some heartfelt apology. Oh, and they also want me to assure him that I never had anything going on with Andy while we were married, because apparently he's convinced himself that's why our marriage fell apart. I am not kidding. There have been emails, multiple emails, long ones. It's like they've made this their personal mission, and I don't even understand why. I mean, where was this energy when Jerry was treating me like garbage during our divorce? Let's not forget that they fully knew what he was doing back then. They knew about the lying, the hiding, the gaslighting. And not only did they not stop him, but they helped him. They helped him keep things from me. They were on his side every step of the way, even when it was clear that he was being cruel and unfair. And now suddenly, because Jerry is having a tough time processing his own actions, I'm the bad guy? I'm the one who's supposed to step up and fix things for him? It's ridiculous. I didn't get an ounce of support from him or his family when I was struggling to make sense of everything during the divorce. I was left to pick up the pieces on my own, so why do they think I owe him anything now? Look, I get that mental health is important, I do. And if Jerry is struggling, I genuinely hope he gets the help he needs. But I'm not going to be the one to fix this for him. He didn't think he owed me closure or explanations when I needed them, and I've made peace with that. I moved on, or at least I tried to. Now I'm just playing by the same rulebook he used. If that makes me the villain in their eyes, so be it. At the end of the day, I'm not responsible for Jerry's healing. He's a grown man, and it's time for him to deal with his own mess, just like I had to deal with mine. Update 2. All right, it has been 3 days since my last update, and for the most part, things have been smooth sailing. No issues, no drama, no unnecessary interruptions. Of course, I should have known that this piece would not sit well with Jerry and his parents. For context, Andy and I both work from home, which I am pretty sure they were unaware of. I can only assume they thought Andy would be out during the day, so they decided that morning ambush tactics were their best shot at catching me off guard. Spoiler, it did not work. This morning I was enjoying my coffee and a relatively peaceful start to the day when the doorbell rang. Thinking it might be a delivery or a neighbor, I opened the door. Big mistake. There they were, Jerry and his very supportive parents. Without so much as a polite hello, they jumped straight into making demands. Jerry's mom was the loudest, insisting that I sit down with Jerry and have a conversation, because apparently poor Jerry is confused and deserves answers. According to them, it is unacceptable for their precious son to be left in the dark like this. Honestly, I just stood there for a second, wondering if I was on a hidden camera show. Then I rolled my eyes so hard, I am surprised they did not get stuck. I told them, flat out, that I was not entertaining this nonsense. I owed Jerry nothing, absolutely nothing. After all, this is the same man who ghosted me without a word of explanation. If he did not have the decency to talk things through back then, why on earth should I bother now? I made it very clear that he could stew in his own confusion for all I cared. At that point, I was ready to slam the door in their faces, but I figured I might as well take the opportunity to say all of this to them directly. I told them in no uncertain terms that if they did not leave immediately, I would call the police. That is when Jerry decided to lose what little composure he had left. He started screaming at me. Actually screaming. He called me all kinds of things. Petty, selfish, horrible. He threw in some creative cursing for good measure, which honestly was more embarrassing for him than anything else. Andy must have heard the commotion because, out of nowhere, he appeared by my side. And let me tell you, he looked pissed. His jaw was clenched, and I could see he was doing everything in his power to keep from tearing into Jerry. As much as I appreciated his support, I really did not want things to escalate. So I pulled out my phone and started dialing, telling Jerry and his parents that if they did not leave my property immediately, I was calling the cops for real. They tried to argue and bicker for a few more seconds, but the sight of me actually dialing must have convinced them I was not bluffing. They finally backed off, but not before hurling a few parting insults my way. Not that it bothered me. At this point, their words hold zero power over me. Andy, however, could not let it slide and yelled back at them as they left, which honestly was kind of satisfying to witness. After they were gone, Andy showed me something that made me breathe a little easier. He had been recording the entire interaction on his phone. While there is not much video footage, he started recording after they were already yelling. The audio is crystal clear. You can hear every word Jerry screamed at me, and it goes on until they left. So now we have solid evidence, and we are prepared for whatever nonsense comes next. If they ever show up here again, not only are we pressing charges, but we are also getting our lawyers involved to file a restraining order against Jerry and his family. I truly hope it does not come to that. I have said everything I needed to say, and I just want to move on. But if they keep pushing, we are ready. Thanks for sticking with me through this chaos. Hopefully the next update will be me saying they finally left me alone for good. Fingers crossed. Update 3. Hey everyone. It has been a few days since Jerry and his parents unexpectedly showed up at my house. Thankfully, after that awkward and honestly draining encounter, they did not try to contact me again. The sense of relief I felt was almost immediate, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Still, I could not help but replay everything in my head, so I decided to talk to a couple of my close friends about what happened. Their feedback surprised me. While they understood why I was upset, they felt that what I did was a bit petty and perhaps unnecessary. However, they also acknowledged that Jerry and his parents' reaction had been totally unhinged. A few of them even suggested I speak to a lawyer just to cover my bases in case things escalated. At first, I thought they were overreacting, but a tiny part of me wondered if I should take their advice. But before I could even make up my mind, something unexpected happened. Last night, I received an email from Jerry. It was long, heartfelt, and honestly a bit of a surprise. He started by saying he is moving to Europe with his parents and promised that I would never hear from him again. I have to admit, reading that gave me an odd sense of relief. Jerry went on to explain some things I never knew, things that, while they do not excuse his behavior, at least gave me some closure. Apparently, when he left me all those years ago, it was not as abrupt as it seemed. He had secretly applied for a job in California while we were still together, but he never told me about it. He said he knew I could not relocate because of the circumstances in my life at the time, and instead of talking to me about it, he just left. He admitted that he had been a coward, afraid of confrontation, and unwilling to face the difficult reality of what his decision would mean for both of us. He thought disappearing would somehow make it easier. Spoiler, it did not. Over the past 4 years, Jerry confessed, he had a few flings but could never really get serious with anyone else. He said he regretted how things ended between us and had been carrying that guilt ever since. When he moved back to town a few months ago to convince his parents to move to Europe with him, he decided to reach out to me, hoping to apologize and maybe even see if there was a chance to rekindle what we had. But then he saw me with Andy, and reality hit him hard. In his email, Jerry wrote that seeing me happy with someone else made him realize he had no right to intrude in my life. Not after everything he put me through. He also acknowledged that sending his parents to confront me was completely out of line and immature. He apologized for his behavior, admitted he had no right to throw tantrums or demand anything from me, and assured me that he was finally ready to move on. He even said that he hopes Andy and I have a beautiful life together because he could see how much Andy loves me. Jerry's email ended with him saying he does not expect forgiveness because he knows it is too late for that, and his apology cannot undo the hurt he caused. He just wanted to acknowledge his mistakes, take responsibility, and let me know he is stepping away for good. I decided not to reply to the email. Instead, I showed it to Andy, my parents, and a few close friends. Everyone agreed that this was the closure I needed. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe without the weight of my past holding me down. Now I am ready to look forward to my future. In a few months, I think Andy and I will start planning our wedding. It feels good to finally put all this behind me and focus on building a new chapter of my life with someone who truly loves me. For the first time in a long time, I feel free, happy, and hopeful.